And you mentioned a major driver for America getting into this war is the threat of the BRICS nations. Now, again, this is something that is not necessarily spoken a lot about on the mainstream news. We've covered a lot about the BRICS nations continually, it seems like, buying gold and de-dollarizing. But what do you think the biggest threat about the BRICS nations is to the U.S.?
You're asking very good questions. China plays a long game. America plays a game to fit the political agenda. So China and Russia, they're not looking for a quick deal. It'll be a step-by-step approach, not just in the military sphere, but in the financial one as well. It would not surprise me if China, Russia, and Iran will see that the straits remain closed or almost closed until the pips begin to squeak, as it were, in America and around G7 countries. Perhaps that is when they will launch their new currency, which will be called the unit and will be backed by gold that their governments and their citizens own. For instance, in China, the government, including the PLA, probably owns something of the order of 25,000 tons of physical gold. And Chinese citizens and institutions who have bought gold off the Shanghai Gold Exchange own another approximate 27,000 tons. The last I heard on good authority, which was several years ago, was that Russia owned 12,000 tons. But that figure is probably higher today than it was when I was given the figure. So what you are also seeing is that the Shanghai Gold Exchange will soon be opening a gold vault in Hong Kong. And if they haven't already completed the construction in Saudi Arabia of a gold vault, it will soon be completed. So if you take Saudi as an example, they have an excess of Chinese currency, which today they can convert into gold on the Shanghai Gold Exchange in Shanghai. But as soon as the vault is opened in their own country, they can convert those excess Chinese currency into gold in Saudi Arabia. So there is a lot of chatter around markets that increasingly trade with China is being conducted in CNY, the Chinese currency, backed by gold. And those that don't want to hold the Chinese currency can convert into gold in Shanghai.
It seems like we definitely do see the moments that the movements that you were speaking about, this movement towards gold in many different areas. I think some pushback that's people will give with respect to this idea of a unified BRICS currency that's backed by gold is that these countries are very different from one another, and they are also don't necessarily have the greatest credit history, if you want to put it that way. So how do you see that all these nations are going to be able to trust each other and have a unified currency?
Another very good question. I'm unsure whether it will be a BRICS currency. It may well be China and Russia leading the pack, and before the BRICS agree amongst themselves to issue a BRICS currency. I think that the BRICS summit meeting to be held in Delhi in September is going to be very critical for the future of BRICS, because India, under Prime Minister Modi, is being wooed strongly by America to ditch their membership of BRICS. So, as I said before, I think that the first stage will be Russia and China launching their currency backed by gold. The BRICS one, if it happens at all, will come later. But if you look at the number of trading partners that China has, I mean, it's going to be pretty worldwide, and particularly amongst countries that are thinking twice about holding dollars. None of this happens overnight. On our workings, it's probably, we're now 2026, it's probably over the next 5 or 6 years before we reach this ultimate restructuring of the global monetary system, where you have a currency that is backed by gold and trades in excess of the US dollar.
That definitely still seems quite soon, given that, a lot of people in this space have been tracking this for, since 2008, 2010, around that area is where I originally got in, I think in 2012. But yeah, I mean, it is crazy. It seems like throughout history, you have governments moving away from real money, gold and silver, and, always they return back to it. And it seems like that's happening right now.
Yeah, I think the bigger picture is that we are moving out of paper assets into physical assets, of which gold is one. And I think that we're going to see this move in a series of steps, small steps, until we get into 2028, when I think that there will then be pretty massive monetary stimulus in front of 28 presidential elections, coinciding at a time when food prices and energy prices will be soaring, to create a highly unstable inflationary syndrome. And what does that mean to the bond vigilantes? I think what we are going to see in that period, 2028 to 2032, is a repeat of what we saw between 1978 and 1982, which was US CPI and global inflation peaking at about 13%. And what did that do to 10-year treasuries? Peaked at 15% in 1981, which then created an economic recession. This time, however, given how leveraged the system is, it will be something deeper than an average recession. So basically what I'm saying is that the outlook for the next 6 years is one of short cycles. And it would be a brave person who went in for an investment, a long-term investment. It's the short cycles that will have to be played, whether in equity markets or assets.